We will call this regular assembly meeting to order on November 21st. Ms. Hughes Candies, would you lead us? Nope, excuse me. Ms. Tree, will you lead us in the flag salute?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Tram. Ms. Hughes Candies, will you do the land acknowledgement?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We would like to acknowledge that the city and borough of Juneau is on unceded Tlingit land and wish to honor the indigenous people of this land. For more than 10,000 years, Alaska Native people have been and continue to be integral to the well-being of our community. We are grateful to be in this place, a part of this community, and to honor the culture, traditions, and resilience of the Tlingit people. Kunoshish.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes Candies. Madam Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Bryson,
Present.
Ms. Hale,
Here.
Ms. Hughes Candies,
Here.
Mr. Smith,
Here.
Ms. Treem,
Here.
Ms. Wall.
Present.
Oh, there you are. Wahalgaduck,
Here.
Ms. Gladysevsky,
Here.
and Mayor Weldon.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Will you give instructions for public participation?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For future assembly meetings, if you want to Zoom in and give public testimony, you would need to do that by 4 p.m. the day of the meeting. Otherwise, you're welcome to come to the assembly chambers and sign up in person for public testimony on either non-agenda items or agenda items. If you go to juneau.org, you will find our agendas and minutes and the Zoom link to be able to listen or watch via Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With that, we will go to our other special order of business. And on behalf of the city and borough of Juneau, we would like to recognize Martin Larson, known as Mort, and Mitchell McDonald, although I think Mr. Larson is the only one here, for their professional assistance with the gas and slide event. Is Mr. Larson here? Go on up. That's all right. Can we call you Mort?
Yes, I go by Mort.
Absolutely. Perfect. We'll get you the right one. So Mort is a geologist with the state of Alaska ADOT and DNR Division of Geological and Geophysical Surveys. That's a mouthful.
Yeah,
And you showed up at the right time. So we have a certificate of appreciation. But before I give this to you.
Well, the community of Juneau is who you and your colleague helped the most. And so I just wanted to take a minute to let this group know the tremendous assistance of Mitch and Mort. And I'm telling you, they're like this team, Mitch and Mort, the geologists, one from DNR, one from DOT, and boy, are they a stellar team. They just showed up in the nick of time at the Gas No Slide event. And I really don't know what our response team would have done without them, because you see they're professionals and they understand the way that the earth is built and the way that earth moves, the way that wood debris moves. And they volunteered their time to give the incident command team the information that we needed to make smart decisions. And you know, you cannot make good decisions without information. And genuinely, these are professionals, skilled professionals, and we learned a lot. We learned about how wood moves down a hill. We learned what a deposition zone is and what a headscarp is. And you know, while we learned a lot about what this may have caused in this event, what we learned really is that we're very fortunate to have professionals like Mort and Mitch in this community that are able to lend their professional expertise in the case of an emergency. And they also lend their expertise across the state. So it truly is professionals like this that, you know, allow us to do our job and keep this community safe. So I want to express my tremendous gratitude as well.
Thank you.
We're so glad you're part of your community. And I should probably grab this. Sorry. So we have the city and borough of Juneau certificate of appreciation to Martin Larson. is recognized for collaboration and assistance during the Gaston Avenue landslide. Your knowledge and professional expertise were instrumental to the success of the city's response. And signed by Beth A. Weldon, Mayor. Have anything you want to say?
Yeah, I'll just say something really quick. I can't take all the acknowledge for this because Capital City Fire Rescue and CBJ, the response that they did was bar none. It was absolutely amazing showing up on the site to see what they did with the circumstances that they were up against. So with me being in that position and then Mitch having that communication perspective was huge because it helped out tame the fires a little bit. And we got to acknowledge where we live, to continue this education and this communication, I think is a powerful tool for us as city leaders, me as a geologist, to educate the public out there. We live in a dynamic place, but there's natural processes that goes on. So I say we continue this. So thank you. I really appreciate it for it.
I just heard you volunteer to talk to the assembly. There you go.
Thank you.
And we'll get Mitch's, so.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Oh. I'll make sure I get this down so when I come back, I'll do this again. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, yes. And I started this position and then the 6th day is when this happened. So.
Welcome to.
For those of you who didn't hear that, he just had started his new position and this happened on the 6th day of his new job. So with that, we go to our second special recognition. So would Mr. Kirby Day III please come to the front? You learn something every day, so. This is a proclamation honoring Kirby Day. Whereas Kirby Day has been working in Juneau tourism since 1991, and whereas in 1997, while at Princess Tours, Kirby stepped up to lead a burgeoning effort to lessen the impacts of tourism and transformed it into a powerful positive effort that incentivized tour operators to join in. And whereas tourism best management practices, TBMP, became the structure for adjusting daily tourism operations to address community issues. And whereas in the early years of the program, Kirby organized annual meetings in multiple areas of town to engage residents and tour operators, hear neighborhood-specific concerns, and generate solutions together. And whereas TBMP has grown since that time, adding ever more operators and guidelines, working to create a harmonious partnership with the community. And whereas TBMP has been replicated at least 5 other ports in Alaska and around the world, and whereas TBMP is cited as a global example of destination stewardship by Cruise Line International Association, and whereas Kirby is locally recognized for his leadership in guiding local operators from a sense of competitiveness to a sense of collaboration that continues to make the program successful today. And whereas Kirby's personal commitment to the TBMP program has been a key to its industry-wide participation and ongoing success. Therefore, I, Beth A. Weldon, Mayor of the City and Borough of Juneau, Alaska, on behalf of the City and Borough Assembly, do hereby issue this and honoring Kirby Day III for his long service to the people and community of Juneau and his outstanding contributions to the happiness, enrichment, and well-being of Alaska's capital city.
Well, thank you. It's very kind. Spent a lot of out in this room. But this since the very beginning has been a team effort. Absolutely. There's so many other people that were involved back in 1997 when some of you probably weren't even driving. The assembly, city administration, and past assemblies and past administrations have been very supportive and very involved in this since 1997. And so credit goes to all of you and them before you for giving us the opportunity and trusting us to come up with a program that turned into something that is a model for managing tourism. We don't solve 100% of the problems for 100% of the people, 100% of the time, but I think we've made an impact and we've created a buffer from 1997 going from 500,000 passengers to nearly 1.4 million now. So the work's not done. It'll continue. Elizabeth Arnett and Travel Juneau will do a great job going forward. I'm sure all of you will continue to support her. The program also wouldn't be successful without the operators, and the operators have been the ones that have stuck with this and stuck with the commitment and the dedication for 25 years now to find ways to be better and do better and manage those impacts in a community-friendly way. So it wouldn't have happened without them and finally the community. As you said, meetings and meetings, right, Maria? Meetings, Ms. Klaaszewski. And so, you know, without the community telling us through meetings and through the assembly and through city management and through the hotline and telling me in the grocery store now and then, which was okay. We wouldn't have been able to identify some of those concerns and the graveness of those concerns. And so it truly is a team effort. And I just encourage everyone to support Elizabeth going forward and Travel Juneau, and the program will go forward and we'll do good things. So thank you very much.
With that, we'll continue onward. Manager's request for agenda changes.
Thank
Manager.
you, Mayor. I've got one agenda change. That would be in item 2 in the packet of regulations for docks and harbors. I'd like to remove number 1 regarding vessels at the National Guard dock so that it can go back to docks and harbors for a little more work, and then amend the manager's recommendation to recommend approval of all of the remaining ones that stay on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Any objections to that? Ms. Stream?
Just a question. Could you repeat that page number?
It would be item number 22 on agenda page 7 of 9.
Oh, okay.
Item one of the 11. So 2 through 11 stay. 1 goes back to docks and harbors for a little more work.
All right, seeing no objection. Thank you for that change. And moving onward, public participation on non-agenda items. There is nobody on Zoom that signed up ahead of time, and we do have at least one person in the room. So I'll call up Ms. Smedley and you'll come to this one. And go ahead and press the button. And since you look like our only one, you can have 3 minutes. Please state your name and area of the town you live in, and you can start when you're ready.
Great. My name is Paula Smedley. I live at 4320 Glacier Highway, Twin Lakes. And I'm here to speak about Twin Lakes light pollution related to the new lights on the Twin Lakes path. I submitted a report of an unsafe or inefficient condition to the city. I believe it was administration section through the website on the 11th of October. I have not heard back from the city, and so I'm coming in to also talk to the assembly. I would say the new Twin Lake light path lights are light pollution. They were a radical, unexpected change for that neighborhood, and they are on all night. You can stand on the path and actually read a book. It feels like walking through a strip mall parking lot. Problems include limited to sleep services for residents, loss of nighttime habitat, complete loss of naturally lit nighttime recreation area, the Twin Lakes path, decrease in area quality of life, increased risk of being targeted as a victim of crime while a pedestrian or runner. I use that area at night and I feel much less safe because there's nobody out at night now, but it's super brightly lit. So there's nothing you can do. Negative impact on resident quality of life, impacted ability to see sky at night, likely negative impacts on local and migratory wildlife that use the Twin Lakes area. I would say that an impact assessment needs to occur, environmental and human. Remediation needs to occur based on impact assessment results, hours of operation, shielding brightness, density, et cetera, et cetera. I propose there are a couple remedies. One, you could disable while the assessment occurs. I know that now they've been on for a couple months, so maybe a complete disable would not be, people have gotten used to using them, but I would suggest that while we're working on an assessment, potentially limit the hours from darkness to 7 p.m. and in the morning from 6:30 a.m. to daylight. And I'd also suggest that the city consider a light pollution ordinance so that it can exist as a planning and protection tool for future issues like this so that something so drastic does not occur again. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Smedley? Ms. Hale and then Mr. Smith.
Thank you very much, Ms. Smedley, for bringing this to our attention. I've seen some areas where they have lights that are lower and just go down, so they're not so bright in the surrounding area. Like less bright, but also the beam goes down. Would something like that be an improvement?
I would say that there's no reason for the lights to be on 24 hours. I do think shielding might be useful. I think the real problem with this was, as far as I'm aware, there was no assessment of the impacts, no notification to residents, no planning, as far as I'm aware, that went into this. And, I'm not a light pollution expert, I don't have any light meter, but I would say that if you were to measure what the light was before and after, it's drastically significant. And I did take photos. I first noticed them on the September 26th, going out for an early morning jog, and was shocked and stunned, and took photos, and you can see the contrast between, what the path was like. And there were a lot of people who were using it. Most people wore headlamps. I think maybe I think remediation needs to occur. That could include shield. But it has drastically changed the area of that neighborhood in a negative way.
Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'll go take a look at this sometime, but Ms. Smedley, you're also you're concerned. Well, you mentioned your concerns, but is the light spilling over into like neighbor properties and like entering into homes and that kind of
Yes,
stuff?
all of that. And also, for example, a good example of potential wildlife impacts. Last year I was walking along the path and, in darkness or early morning or late evening, for example, I saw a blue heron along the edge. That area is lit now. There were otters, again, there's birds. So it both shines into the houses that are along that area. I haven't actually done a poll of residents. I wanted to talk to you guys first and talk to the city. But it looks like it shines into people's homes. Those lights are actually brighter than the street lights.
Any further questions? All right, thank you for your
Great.
testimony.
And
today.
any questions, happy to answer further and provide photos if anybody wants to see before and after.
Thank you. Anybody else in the room? No, seeing none. All right, well, that brings us to the consent agenda. Any public requests for consent agenda changes other than ordinances for introduction? Any assembly requests for consent agenda changes? Can't speak right now. Seeing none, assembly action, Ms. Gladysevsky.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would move the consent agenda and I ask for unanimous consent.
Seeing no objection, the consent agenda passes. So that brings us to public hearing.
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Wall.
sorry, I was trying to get your attention, but I have a conflict to disclose on, so I had to objection to that motion.
All righty, sorry about that. I did look, but I didn't see the hand. Wait. Mr. Palmer's giving me the nod, so let's hear your objection and your conflict.
I just want to disclose that I have a conflict related to oh God. Item 12, resolution 3006, a resolution ratifying the economic terms tentative agreement between the city and borough and the International Association of Firefighters. And so my vote on this consent agenda, so I have to recuse myself from that specific item. My vote only applies to the rest of the consent agenda.
All right, thank you for that. So if everybody got that, Ms. Wall is approving everything on the consent agenda, but the item that's relating to the ratifying the contracts. So any further objection? See none, that the consent agenda passes. Moving on to public hearing, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Public hearing, this is item number 17, ordinance 2022-06 BU, an ordinance appropriating $500,000 to the manager for the Aurora Harbor Improvements Capital Improvement Project, funding provided by Harbor Funds.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Manager.
Docks and Harbors has been awarded a $2 million matching harbor facility grant from the Alaska Department of Transportation, restricted solely to project construction. This ordinance would appropriate $500,000 of Harbor's fund balance to the Aurora Harbor Improvement CIP, increasing the total project balance sufficiently to leverage the full value of the DOT 50/50 matching grant while ensuring adequate funds are available to award the project bid, which is estimated $4 million. This project was number 13 on CBJ's FY23 legislative priority list. I recommend you adopt this ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. And we do have folks from the Harbor Board and Docks and Harbors. Sorry, not just the Harbor Board, Docks and Harbors here. If we have any questions for any of them. Any member of the public wish to speak to this agenda item? Seeing none, we will bring it to the assembly. Mr. Bryson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move we adopt ordinance 2022-06 BU, an ordinance appropriating $500,000 to the manager for Aurora Harbor Improvements Capital Improvement Project. Ask for unanimous consent.
Any objections? Seeing none, that ordinance passes. Item 18, Madam Clerk.
Ordinance 2022-39, an ordinance amending prohibited acts within the boat harbor related to dogs and other domestic animals.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Manager.
Docks and Harbors Board has considered and recommends changes to 85-25-090. The intent is to allow pedestrians without boat ownership to walk dogs on CBJ harbor floats, which is currently prohibited. Additionally, there is administrative language addressing the curbing of domestic animals on harbor floats. The proposed changes have been included as publicly noticed agenda items and discussed at Docks and Harbors regular board or operations planning committee meetings on a number of dates and have been advertised through a variety of media methods. I recommend you adopt this ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Is there any member of the public that wishes to speak to this ordinance? Seeing none, we will bring it back to the assembly. Ms. Hughes Scandies.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the assembly adopt ordinance 2022-39 and ask for unanimous consent.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes Scandies. I have to object for purposes of a question, but it looks like Mr. Smith is already raising his finger. So Mr. Smith, go ahead while I find what I need to ask.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also was just objecting for the purpose of a question on this and the other Docks and Harbors related items on the agenda tonight. It says that they received no written comment. I just had a question about what public notice looks like for these resolutions and regulation changes. I mean, it says Juneau Empire and Facebook and Docks and Harbors Tidelines and KNY Action Line. I'm wondering if anything's like posted at Docks, posted at the ramps or mailed or anything like that. Just curious about some of those outreach items.
Mr. Creswell, is that you?
Thank you, Mr. Smith. These were posted just as you said. Juneau Empire talked about on Action Line, posted multiple times on Facebook. I believe we even had a flyers up on several of our bulletin boards advertising that all the regulations, the 11 regulations were being changed. So we worked over it throughout the course of the summer to notify the public that these were happening. If I remember correctly, we didn't receive any public comment on this item.
Go ahead, follow up.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. No, that's good. I was just kind of more curious and just wanting to ensure that there are, just more simple and non-electronic forms of public notification. And I mean, I think notifications on the bulletin board at the top of the ramp, someone will see them, and then I know folks at the harbor talk. So that's good. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't just all electronic. Thank you. I remove my objection.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Anybody else? All right, thank you. So this is on page 95, if you're looking for the ordinance. So it says line 22, the urine must be cleaned up by the application of water in an amount sufficient to eradicate the urine. I understand you're gonna do with this hoses. And if so, what are you doing in the winter?
Madam Mayor, during the winter, we have full-time year-round water in the harbors, so there's water available.
And you're not afraid those hoses are gonna freeze?
Most people are pretty good about draining their hoses out. I will not go on the record as saying everyone drains their
Okay.
hoses out.
All right, just checking. Okay, with that, I'll remove my objection. So any further objection? Seeing none, this ordinance passes. You might as well stay up there. There might be others. Let's see. Item 19, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ordinance 2022-43, an ordinance amending boat harbor regulations relating to vessel identification.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Manager.
Docks and Harbors Board has considered and recommends changes to 85-25-020. The intent of this change is to require all vessels in CBJ harbors to display the name or other state or federal identification. Proposed change has been included in publicly noticed agenda items and discussed at Docks and Harbors regular board or operations planning committee meetings on 5 separate occasions. Docks and Harbors Board conducted a public hearing and a special board meeting on August 25th. Special board meeting and intent to propose changes to 85-25-090 was noticed through a variety of media methods. I recommend you adopt this ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Any member of the public wish to speak to this ordinance? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the assembly. Ms. Trine.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move the Assembly adopt ordinance 2022-43 and ask for unanimous consent.
Any objection? Seeing none, that ordinance is passed. So Mr. Creswell, you get a break for a few moments while we deal with some other stuff. Well, we have a few. Yeah, I was just saying you could have a break if you so desire, but you can stay up there too. On a new business, item 20, Mr. Manager, I'll just go straight to you on that one.
Mayor, this is the Hanson Gress application to purchase city property. Hanson Gress recently purchased the building and property located at 1000 Harbor Way. A portion of this building is located on leased city tidelands. City tidelands are all designated retain in the land management plan. Prior to this property being re-subdivided and sold, the plan will need to be amended by ordinance to allow for the disposal of this property. Hanson Gress submitted an application to acquire the city property in order to be able to make major structural and architectural improvements to the aging building. The applicants are having difficulties redeveloping the property because the building is over the property lines. If the property is acquired, the applicant will consolidate the lots in order to create a property that conforms to CBJ code. This application was reviewed by the Docks and Harbors Board at the August 25th meeting and provided a motion to advance this application. Lands Housing Economic Development Committee reviewed this request at September 26, 2022 meeting and forwarded this application to the Assembly with a motion to work with the original proposer in accordance with 5309-260. I request a motion to authorize the manager to negotiate the disposal of city property to Hanson Gress.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Since this is new business, is there any person that would like to speak to this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the Assembly. Walgadock. Oh, excuse me, Ms. Wall.
Sorry, I was just gonna ask the question. If you're asking for a motion, I'll wait until that motion has been made.
Walgadock, thank you.
Yes, I move that the city manager negotiate the disposal of the Henson Gress property and ask for unanimous consent.
Thank you, Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Object just for a question. In my recollection of the Docks and Harbors discussion around this, there was talk of the city maintaining a easement on this property that would help with seawalk development or waterfront plan development. Is that still a potential term of this agreement?
They're all trying to decide who's going to answer that question, but it looks like Mr. Creswell has
Give
driven,
it a shot.
got the short straw.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And to my knowledge, that was discussed in depth with the Hanson Gress group, and that was something that I would assume would be sleuthed out when we start getting into negotiations for how to dispose of the property, but they are willing to work with us however we need to work with, have an easement around that property for future expansion of the uplands in the vicinity of Harris Harbor.
Any follow-up, Ms. Wall? Do you remove your objection? She's nodding yes. All right, any further questions, Ms. Treen?
Mayor, the manager's report says that the land management plan needs to be amended by ordinance to allow for disposal. Is that happening simultaneously?
Sure, Mr. Watt.
Mayor, we will make that all happen at the same time.
Thank you. Good question, Ms. Train. Anything further? Seeing none, that ordinance passes. So that brings us to item 21. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is hardship and senior citizen disabled veteran late filed real property tax exemption applications.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Manager.
There are two property owners that have requested the Assembly authorize the assessor to consider a late filed exemption for their property assessment. The information is on packet pages 101 to 103. The Assembly should consider each request separately and determine whether the property owner was unable to comply with the April 30 filing requirement. I recommend the Assembly act on each of these applications individually, but you can do so in one motion.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Ms. Tree, Ms. Glaszewski. Excuse me.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would say that the Assembly reviewed these two applications from Jeffrey Trout and Carl Van Door. And I move that we refer these to the assessor for review and action. And I ask for unanimous consent.
Thank you, Ms. Glaszewski. Any objection? Seeing none, that motion is approved. Let's take a 5-minute recess. I have to talk to the attorney for 2 seconds. That was a quick 5 minutes, but he answered my question quickly. So unfortunately, we have to go back to the consent agenda. My apologies. I did not notice when I was looking at it, the bid award. Item J15 was to Dawson Construction. And since my son worked for him last summer and probably hopefully this summer, I have to recuse myself. So when we will go ahead and vote on that once again. And when I vote on it, I will not be voting on that item. So any objections to the consent agenda? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved and the attorney will be happy. Item 22, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is regulations amending Title 05 Docks and Harbors, Chapters 07, 15, 20, and 25.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Manager.
Docks and Harbors Board has considered and recommends changes to 10 separate regulations under 05. Reservation for more than 7 days need to be paid in full. 05 CBJ AC 15035 impose a 6-month threshold for residential vessel leasing arrangement. 05 20 050 kayak launch ramp use at Statter Harbor is free. 05 20 060 clarifying Statter Harbor bus lot permit fee. 05 20 090 allowing crane use with a key card. 05 20 110 clarifying storage fees. 05 10 130 clarifying summer parking lot fees at Statter Harbor. 05 20 160 repealing Ock Bay loading facility float fee. 05 20 190 impose a fee for vessels that do not move every 10 days during the summer. 05 25 060 and clarify winter moorage process. 05 25 080. These omnibus administrative changes have been included as publicly noticed agenda items and discussed at Docks and Harbors regular board or operations planning committee meetings on May 18, June 22, June 30, July 20, and July 28. After the requisite minimum 21-day public notice period, Docks and Harbors Board conducted a public hearing at a special board meeting on August 25th. Special board meeting and intent to propose omnibus changes to Title 05 regulations was noticed via Juneau Empire, Facebook, Docks and Harbors Tideline, and during KINY Action Line appearances. Docks and Harbors received no written comments to the proposed changes. Members of the public provided testimony at the August 25th public hearing, but no changes were made to the advertised language. Prior to the September 12th Assembly meeting, CBJ law provided legal direction that the proposed changes did not comport with CBJ Code 0160220 fiscal notes on regulations. As such, Docks and Harbors repeated the process with the inclusion of fiscal notes for each of the regulation changes. Docks and Harbors regular board or ops planning committee discussed the 11 regulations changes with fiscal notes at the following meetings: September 21, September 29, October 19, and October 27. On November 9, after exceeding the requisite 21-day public notice period and making notices through the above media sources, Docks and Harbors Board conducted the second public hearing at a special board meeting. Docks and Harbors received email correspondence from a single harbor patron regarding one of the regulation changes which the board considered in their deliberations. I recommend the Assembly approve these regulations.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Any member of the public wish to speak to this regulation? Seeing none, we will bring it back to the Assembly, and Ms. Gladysevsky has volunteered for this one.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would move the Assembly adopt regulations labeled 2 through 11 on page 7 of 9. And I ask for unanimous consent.
Thank you, Ms. Gladysevsky. Ms. Treen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have some questions. And I want to say thank you to Docks and Harbor staff and the board. You guys have clearly been really busy. So I've never had an all Docks and Harbors meeting before. I kind of like it. And thanks for the fiscal notes, which I've never seen before on any regs changes, but I appreciate that they are here. But, okay, my questions, just two questions, and they are on number 2 and number 3. And I'm just curious about the reasoning why. So number,
Packet page 104 and 105.
thank you. Number 2 is that the change is all reservations for a period of more than 7 days get paid in full. And number 3 is that I think my understanding is that liveaboards can't then lease their own lease to other folks. And I'm just curious on the reasoning behind those two.
Mr. Criswell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Ms. Treem. For your first question, the reservation confirmation and charges, this has been an internal policy for the last 2 seasons and it's worked very well. What we were running into were this is all the large yachts that pay the reservation rate during the summertime for either the Statter Harbor Breakwater, the intermediate vessel float down at the port. And what we were finding was these vessels were making reservations for very of time and were paying for their first night of moorage, and then they would leave and we had that space reserved and we couldn't sell it to somebody else at that point. So this essentially holds people to their reservation and we're able to get that income from those reservations. And then your other one was on which one?
This is the residence surcharge. So
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, maybe that's. Yeah, the 6-month threshold. Was that my question? I wrote why next to it. I don't really know which part of it I was talking about, but I had a question. Yeah, I guess on the 6-month
Yeah,
threshold.
you want to speak to that in general and why is it 6 months?
Just reading through it again real quick for make sure I speak to it properly. Okay, so when we did this one, we were looking at, we're running into lots of problems where folks were improperly renting out their vessels. These were not always the best vessels to be renting out. And when you have a boat that requires a substantial amount of upkeep to keep it floating and keep the harbor safe, and the condition of some of these vessels make it where it's not a good practice for multiple people to be coming on and off these boats that have no ownership of the vessel and no care of the vessel. And this is simply to make it easier on harbor staff to manage the harbors and know who's in our harbors and develop a relationship with the people that are in our harbors staying there.
Any follow-up from the stream?
Nope, that's it. Thank you very much.
Any further questions? Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for speaking to these generally and for the work you've been doing. I was hoping that similar to the 6-month, you could talk about how staff or the board landed on 10 days. I know you prior had the 10 days movement, but what is it about that? What is it about the summer management that you're adding that now?
Mr. Creswell.
Thank you. So Statter Harbor was built in 1986, I believe. And it was built by the state. It's a purely transient harbor. That's why there's a very large bays. It's all side time moorage. And there's a lot of history behind why the state did it that way. I don't need to go into all of that, but when harbors took over and developed regulations using state stuff, originally, I believe it was 3 days that boats had to move every 3 days. We increased that every 10 days. And the only reserve moorage in Statter Harbor currently is A float, B float, and the new passenger for hire floats. The rest of the harbor remains totally transient in nature, except for the reservation zone we have on the breakwater. That gives, as you know, Statter Harbor is by and far our busiest harbor and is just chock full during the summertime. And what this does is encourages turnover and allows the rest of the community to use the harbor equally versus someone coming in there and just camping out and getting a good spot and never moving. Statter Harbor, in my tenure with the department, has always been a transient facility, and we're just looking to make it easier for our staff to manage the 10-day move rule.
Okay, can I follow up?
Go ahead, Ms. Hughes.
That's super helpful. Thank you for that. And I see that there's the exception to the rule if you make the request to the harbor master. So if someone was out of town or had a medical situation, that would be approved. All right, thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
Anything further? Ms. Glasowski,
Okay, there's a motion on the table.
thank you. I thought you were looking at me like you had something.
Oh, no, I'm good.
Okay, any objections to the motion? Seeing none, the motion is passed. I think we're done with you, Mr. Creswell. Thank you.
Thank you all.
And thank you, Mr. Etheridge and Ms. Durr for being here today. So that brings us to the assembly meeting calendar, which is in your packet, and I have one. Well, let's see if anybody else, otherwise I have an amendment. Ms. Hale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have an amendment and I think I won't let this rise to the level of an objection. But I am going to want to talk about this in our retreat. I really think we can do something about the finance committee meetings. I really don't think we need to have 7 in a row. And I think there are better ways of using our time and using the time of the people that come before the finance committee meeting than having all of those boards present to the finance committee meeting and using an enormous amount of assembly members' time. I will not attend all of those meetings this year. I will not do that to myself again. Thank you.
Thank you, but remember, some of those are just placeholders and we usually don't use the last 2 of them. But my amendment, in case anybody else has anything, is I want everybody to mark their calendar now, so we don't end up in the same problems. Tentative dates for the retreat will be November 18th and December 2nd. Mark your calendars. No deer hunting, the middle of those. So with that amendment to the dates, I'll come back to you, Ms. Gladysevsky. We have to approve it. I should look at the ladies on the thing. And I think we've lost Ms. Wall, so she's 4 hours difference than us, so I think she was gonna duck early, so. Well, Holger Doc, do you have anything to add to the calendar? Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Gladysevsky.
I move we adopt the assembly meeting calendar in our packet with the amendment, possible 2 dates that the Madam Mayor mentioned on November 18th and December 2nd.
Any objection? Seeing none, the calendar is approved for now, which is always subject for changes.
For now.
So with that, we will go to item 24. Who's got this one, Mr. Manager?
Supplemental agreement, hospital campus water line replacement. 5350-040C gives the manager limited authority to approve supplemental agreements to existing capital improvement projects, provided that the assembly is notified and that there is a best interest finding. Best interest finding memorandum is included in the packet, pages 120 to 123, along with a drawing of the area of work. Major benefits of this supplemental agreement are to allow various Bartlett projects to stay on schedule and to allow close coordination on campus construction activity. As this supplemental agreement is within the manager's procurement limits, no action is requested by the assembly, and this staff report is provided to meet the reporting requirement. Could answer any questions if there are any.
All right, so this is just for reporting requirement. Okay. Ms. Wahog, excuse me, Wahalga Doctor, do you have your hand raised? Sorry, you just saw movement out of the corner of my eye.
No, just scratching my head.
Any questions for Mr. Watt? Seeing none, the reporting requirement is taken care of. With that, staff reports, any staff reports?
Staff reports, thank you.
Perfect. Brings us to assembly reports, the mayor's report. I don't have much to add. Other than happy Thanksgiving to everybody. It was certainly a pleasure to honor not only our geologist, but Mr. Day, who has been helpful for us in many ways, especially for the city and the VITF. That was great. And then Ms. Wall asked me to report on the school board because she was going to duck early. I think you've seen the front news of the paper that the school board is in a deficit for fiscal year 22 and is behind still in fiscal year 23. And I believe we are going to hear from Ms. Karen Tarver, the auditor, at our next committee of the whole. Is that correct, Mr. Manager?
Mayor, at the next finance committee
Oh,
meeting
sorry,
on the
finance.
30th.
I'm sorry, Ms. Trim. So that's on 11:30 if people are interested in that. Other than that, I did get to briefly see my sons, and one of them is in the Pacific on a ship that we can't say much about, but we won't see him probably till July. So we're a little sad about that, but happy Thanksgiving and again to everybody. So we'll start on this side. Ms. Gladishevsky,
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
committee of the whole.
Committee of the the committee of the whole.
I'm
Met
not sick.
met on November 7th. And the agenda included a update from Hunatotum. We're happy to hear their initial plans for their new land that they now own. We also talked about the ordinance related to property tax appeals and codifying those changes. We heard about hazard mapping. And we talked about Parks and Rec board consolidation. So consolidating the Parks and Rec board with all the separate individual boards, and that's proceeding apace. The next committee of the whole meeting is next Monday. And there's a big agenda there, so be prepared to bring your food.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Gladishevsky. Finance, Ms. Trine.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In our last finance committee meeting, we had a great report from JEDC on short-term rentals, and we did some housekeeping items. Madam Mayor stole all my thunder about next week's finance committee meeting. We do have one next Wednesday, the 30th. It will begin at 5:30. So thank you, everybody, for accommodating that earlier start time. And we will be getting an overview, our pre-retreat overview on finances, and we'll have the latest sales tax numbers. And Karen Tarver will be there to talk about the school district audit, but I also want to report that I, as finance chair, had a conversation with Ms. Tarver a couple of weeks ago about our own audit, which is part of the audit process, is that she checks in with the finance chair and any interested assembly members. We're always, she works for us. So if you ever have questions, she's happy to answer them. She did tell me they were kind of off to kind of a late start compared to usual, which like everywhere in the world has to do with staffing issues. So she wasn't concerned about it. And that's my finance committee report.
Thank you, Ms. Trine. Ms. Hughes Candies. Lands.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Lands met November 7th. We forwarded the Hunatotum Corporation lease request to the CAL because it's a large issue and we knew we were getting our first presentation on their designs that evening. We looked at a couple of property requests, both the Taku Terrace, which was denied, and the Parisi property, which we saw before, which was also denied. We got updates from Travel Juneau and the Visitor Industry Task Force implementation update from Ms. Perry and Ms. Pierce. We got an update on Telephone Hill from Mr. Blydorn. And our next meeting will be next Monday.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes Candies. Mr. Bryson, Public Works.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Public Works met and we talked about some housekeeping stuff with Hospital Drive meander that we passed tonight. We talked about the sale grant that allowed for a minivan. I think that also passed this evening. The Eagle Crest alternate procurement, EV parking up near Basin Road, and lovely source control at Public Works. So all kinds of fun public works stuff. Thank you,
Get all
Madam
the
Mayor.
fun topics, Mr. Bryson. Mr. Smith, your first chairhood tonight, and I believe we should have a couple nominations to make.
Yes, I believe so. Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Human Resources Committee met just before this meeting, started right on time and ended early. We have some appointments I'd like to move here. The Human Resources Committee recommended to the full assembly the appointments of Garrett Schoenberger and Alexander Kotlarov to the 2 at-large seats to the Juneau Economic Development Council, beginning immediately and ending October 31st, 2025. So move those.
Any objections? Seeing none, they are appointed.
Very good, thank you. The HRC also recommended to the full assembly the appointment of Paula Drake to a unexpired seat on the Juneau Human Rights Commission with this term beginning immediately and ending May 31st, 2023.
Any objection to that appointment? Seeing none, she's appointed.
And the committee recommended the appointment of Ilsa Lund to the Juneau Commission on Sustainability for a term beginning immediately and ending June 30th, 2023.
Any objection on that appointment? Seeing none, they are appointed.
Very good. And then I believe this is the time now, expecting to have empowered board interviews and appointments for the hospital board and the planning commission. The 2 dates that we looked at were Wednesday, December 14th and Thursday, December 15th. And planning to hold those via Zoom only. Yes, I don't know if any dates don't work for anyone or if.
Are you planning on doing it on both of those nights? Is that the plan?
I think we were expecting to, maybe asking to hold them in case we had enough applicants that we needed to use 2 nights, but ideally we would just have one.
Okay, if anybody has some conflict, please let the clerk know, but I don't see anybody protesting that they're not going to be here.
5:30. Yep. And one small change, we are expecting to maybe gather and speak 10 or 15 minutes before we start the interviews versus the kind of typical 5, just to discuss process and stuff. But
All right, thank you, Ms. Treem.
Question for Chair Smith. What's the deadline for applying for those? Has it passed already?
thank you, Ms. Treem. The deadline for the applications to be submitted to for the hospital board and planning commission is November 30th. So there's still 9 days left. So one thing we did discuss during the meeting is, reaching out and just trying to generate more applicants, especially for those 2 important boards.
Go. Yes, thank you, Mr. Smith. Sorry, I was writing that down. Ms. Glassjewski.
Do we know, Mr. Smith, if any current members will or will not be applying, as in for sure we have open seats, or how, do you know?
Yes, thanks, Ms. Glassjewski. On the hospital board, my understanding is that 1 member is terming out. I believe he served 3 terms, Mark Johnson. There's possibility that a current board member will not be reapplying, but that's not totally known. So potentially up to 2. And then on the planning commission, I know they have 1 vacancy and then a couple others coming open, but I would potentially expect at least 1 vacancy on the planning commission, if not more.
All right, but 3 seats are up
There's 3 seats.
for each one. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Anything further? You survived your first meeting. Good job. All right, and I don't think we have any of our special ones happening, although Ms. Hale will probably have to get her school facilities started sooner rather than later. Yeah, with that, we will go on to our liaison reports and comments and questions. And we'll start on Zoom tonight. Well, get on.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. the last planning commission meeting had discussion about the Teal Street road improvements, and they approved that. There was also a discussion about the Glacier Highway 444 dwelling that is being planned. There was some discussion about some privacy against the neighbor next door, and also in terms of where the road access was going to be. But I think they came to good terms with, you know, a middle ground on all of those things, and that was approved as well. I haven't been to the Systemic Racism Review Committee yet because I was traveling during their last meeting, but both are meeting tomorrow. So get the opportunity to join, and I'll have more to say about SRRC at our next meeting.
Thank you, and we'll look forward to it. All right, Mr. Bryson.
Madam Mayor, Docks and Harbors met, and they have a retreat coming up on the 7th and 8th of December. They had a brief discussion about the UAS property and that boatyard. I did learn an interesting fact. We have a second city boatyard. So that was not the only place where boats can be pulled out of the water. There is a second boatyard. So that was valuable information. They talked about the Thane Ore House has some diesel issues. They're trying to do some environmental work there. And they discussed the regulations that we passed this evening. It was a good 3-hour Docks and Harbor meeting. All right. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson. Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Let's see, the Eagle Crest Board met Thursday, November 3rd, but I was stuck in Galena because my plane hadn't showed up yet. So I missed Zooming with them, but they discussed, they'd had their retreat. So they were talking about that and getting the manager's report. They're getting the mountain ready and running the lift several times a day, and they've serviced the cats, and it's getting exciting up there. They're working on further solidifying, strengthening staffing, since that was such an issue, looking at what else they can do there. And they are continuing to work on everyone's favorite topic, the gondola. So design continues, and they are ambitious in their where they hope to get to by the spring. I have not met with the Chamber of Commerce yet, but I was traveling a lot this month, so looking forward to meeting with them. I went to a planning commission meeting just for fun because I miss them, to watch the approval of the units out in Peterson Hill, or making it through its first hurdle anyway. And I had the opportunity last week to represent CBJ on a National Association of Counties Housing Task Force that's happening at a national level. And it was a really, really great meeting with really great housing experts and a lot of experienced county commissioners and other local government officials. And I'm really excited. We have 4 more meetings in the coming year to see what I can take from that and bring back to us. So good kickoff meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes Candies. And you reminded me that I was at the National League of Cities in Kansas City with my friend, Mr. Barr, and we were doing childcare stuff. So that was good. And along the way, they had many, many different booths with pamphlets and stuff. And Mr. Scanlon, I see he's on the line. I got him one with an outdoor ninja course and a skate park for his summer plans. So we'll be sending them on interdepartmental mail here soon. So anyway, Ms. Treem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I attended my first Bartlett board meeting the day after our last regular assembly meeting. Having never attended one of their board meetings before, I was blown away by the quality of the discussion, perhaps even better than our own discussion sometimes. So they were talking about debating the merits of a new surgical robot, and I believe that moved forward. I should have taken better notes. And they're meeting again tomorrow, so I will be joining them tomorrow. And I also attended my first JEDC board meeting. They discussed how they are going to begin the administration of the Southeast Elder Care Coalition grants that they have received to provide wage subsidies similar to the AEYC Hearts program for elder care workers, which is pretty neat. And then Senator Murkowski joined the meeting and they spent the rest of the time talking to Senator Murkowski. And so the AML annual conference is coming up soon. I think the dinner we get to have at AML is one of the funnest things we do. I was gonna take the lead on planning it if nobody else wants to. Okay, I'll send out an email with
Sounds good.
to everybody and try to get
I was
us,
gonna ask for a volunteer.
try to get us all organized and have a good dinner.
Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Attended my first Parks and Rec Advisory Committee. They were going over their legislative priority list for capital projects. We'll see something from them, of course, but I believe their top three are going to be the Lemon Creek Multimodal Path, the off-highway vehicle park out the road, and then the Jackie Reniger Skate Park and Park Area Development. There was no travel Juneau meeting. I was not able to go to the Juneau Commission on Housing and Homelessness because I went along with Mr. Bryson to Chamber of Commerce last Thursday to hear from the new Bartlett CEO, David Keith. Seems like a sharp person. Good to have some good leadership back in the organization. Was talking about a few important things. I mean, things that rung true to me, such as thinking about housing and how to develop the workforce. He seemed to have some good success at his last CEO position in Oklahoma. As we mentioned, the Hospital Board and Planning Commission have vacancies and then application by November 30th. This weekend, I participated in the Juneau Radio Center's Caring is Sharing food drive. Encouraged by Mr. Bryson to do that. That was really neat. So I got to be at Super Bear, encouraging people to contribute food to the Southeast Food Bank. For the hour I was there, people donated either in actual food or in funds, 500 pounds of food, which is great. They shoot for like 20,000 pounds, but I was told that the food bank goes through over 200 pounds of food a day. So that 500 pounds only lasts for 2.5 days. So as we're going into the holiday season, just encourage everyone to contribute so that no one is hungry during this holiday season. As a reminder, there is the Salvation Army Thanksgiving event this Thursday for those who just might want a Thanksgiving meal. It's from 11 to 1 at the Yacht Club. And so there's opportunities to contribute and volunteer there, or just get people again who might need a meal there. Attended the trail mix auction and was asked to speak and talked about the importance of trails to us as individuals, as social beings, and then also for our community and economy. A big shout out to Dave Haas, who has been a board member for Trail Mix for 13 years. He's resigning his position this year. He received a Lifetime Achievement Award, the first ever given to a Trail Mix board member. Anyway, a really great event. And then also I toured the Coast Guard cutter Icebreaker Healy with Deputy Mayor Gladaszewski and others from the city. On that, I did just see something about how there's a potential that the United States might buy an icebreaker. And in the article, they mentioned that it was very interesting. It was in the Wall Street Journal that it may be home ported in Juneau. Unsure if that is true or not, but exciting. I mean, and I guess just for me and just as a comment here is just as I've spoken with you at the Coast Guard and just, and I know it's on Mr. Yucatel's list and the managers, and we talk about it when we meet with our federal lobbyists, but just how important the Coast Guard is in our community and just trying to do all we can to, increase the presence or make sure the presence that is here and the families here, have housing and all that kind of stuff, just so there, because it is an important part of our community. So anyway, just I think that's on everyone's radar, but I think good to just keep it on there and something to keep working towards. So
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
that's my report. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And I'm assuming that 500 pounds was donated to keep you in jail.
That's correct. Yes. So they do this jail thing and people can come and contribute to either keep you in jail or get you out. And my crime was for speaking too long at assembly meetings, which I am guilty of once again tonight. Thank you.
At least you're consistent. Ms. Hale.
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll try to be fast, but I got a lot of stuff to talk about. I just wanted to comment on Ms. Stream's first Bartlett board meeting when they talked about surgical robotics. They talked about that at my first Bartlett board meeting 4 years ago. They never decided then, but it really brought back memories. Ms. Gladishevsky and I attended a Housing Chamber Task Force meeting on the 1st of November. Various concerns came up. There was a strong concern expressed about CDD support for the Planning Commission. And I've also heard from people on the Planning Commission, very concerned about CDD and law not able to move Title 49 changes. We know that these changes are really important for the Assembly. I had reached out to the manager last week and I need to follow up and talk about that a little bit more. So let's see, let me go back now. Okay, so on the 10th of November, I attended my first airport board meeting. I did that by Zoom because of my schedule. It was an efficient meeting, but there was a lot of discussion at the end of the meeting about a 5-foot easement that was not going to be in place, and it was a lot of discussion. So it was a good meeting, and I'm looking forward to the next one being in person. On the 15th of November, I attended the Commission on Aging meeting. As Ms. Scandies has observed, it's an incredibly active and dedicated group. We talked about various things, including the Southeast Alaska Elder Care Coalition, the anyway, whatever that abbreviation is. They have actually obtained a $2.5 million grant to increase to subsidize the wages and also increase the ability of people to provide elder care. That's an ongoing project right now, and Ms. Huskandes and I attended a conversation with people from JCOA today about that project as well. On the 19th, on Saturday, I attended the Climate Chamber Music concert at the State Museum, and it was amazing. There were, I think, 7 Juno composers partnered with 7 climate scientists, and they just did an incredible concert. And it was just a reminder to me of just how important the arts are in our community. And it was wonderful to be with so many of my friends and colleagues and people throughout town again. So I just really loved it. And that's a great facility. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Hale. Ms. Klatashevsky.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Both Ms. Hale and Mr. Smith mentioned several things so that I attended. Appreciate Ms. Hale's also summary of the housing task force that we attended. And Mr. Smith's pitch for please donate food to get him in or out of jail, depending on which one you prefer. I also I attended actually JCOS Commission on Sustainability had 2 meetings since we last met. They had a special meeting and a regular meeting, and they're working, among the things they're working on that you might be interested in are they're working on a memo to us for prior to our retreat so that we have their recommendations. And so that's great. And they're spiffing up that memo and we should get it any day. And they started talking about other initiatives that they may or may not push forward, property assessed clean energy program introduction, and various other things, but we'll save those for if they actually push them forward. So those are that's the report about the meetings I went to. I have 2 questions for the manager. and one is on the Twin Lakes lights that was mentioned, and you don't have to answer now, but usually, Parks and Rec is among the people that do all kinds of planning, and they're always planning. So it was wondering how it happened that all these lights went up and nobody knew, or maybe they did know, maybe Paula just didn't know. I don't know. So that's one question. And then, and you could tell us later if you don't know, but the other one is about wastewater COVID testing. I was asked by a member of the public about, or they mentioned that Juneau's numbers were up or down, and I didn't know we were doing it. So if you could let the assembly know that we're doing it again and where those data are so they can see where that is.
Mr. Manager or Mr. Barr, who's taking this one?
Mayor, on Twin Lakes lighting, we don't have any information, but we'll get back to you on that. And on the wastewater?
Mr. Barr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Ms. Glaszewski, Deputy Mayor Glaszewski. So yes, we restarted wastewater COVID testing at the end of August in this year and have been doing it since then. We did that as part of a federal program that the CDC is now managing and paying for. You may recall that we did wastewater testing early in the pandemic. When we were doing that, we were paying for it. We didn't do it very long because it was very expensive and we weren't getting very useful data out of it. And so we stopped, but the program restarted again under management of the CDC. All that data is available on the CDC's website. It's quite easy to find. If you just Google CDC wastewater, it's the first link. And you can go, it brings you up to a map of the country. You can go click on Juneau again, and get the data both graphically or in an Excel file. I will say it remains challenging to interpret the data. The science continues to evolve on that front. It is, I think, most useful to look at it from a trend perspective to see if the numbers are going up or down. It's much harder to interpret the actual specific number itself. There are a lot of factors that influence it that we can't control for. And to whether those numbers are up or down, even that is a little bit hard to say, but they're not as high as they used to be. I can tell you that right now.
Thank you.
All right, just a couple things. So from 11 to 1 at the Yacht Club on Thanksgiving, Salvation Army's Thanksgiving dinner and Christmas tree lighting in Douglas on Friday, the 25th at 6 p.m. and Ms. Hughes Candies has agreed to do that for me. So, but if you have time, run over to Douglas by the Methodist Church there, and they'll be lighting their Christmas tree. In response to the icebreaker, I just submitted a letter last week and a packet to them for that. So there is some action we're trying to do that. And shout out to Mr. Yucatel for that. He's been taking the lead on that one. And I think that's all I had to add to everything. Mr. Bryson also spent some time in food jail. Ms. Hale.
If I may share an anecdote about that icebreaker that was here. My mom came over to my house. She lives next door, and she was really excited because she had just talked to my aunt. My mom is in her 80s and my aunt is in her 70s, and she had just talked to her aunt, my aunt, and she was really excited because there was a great big iceberg downtown. And we got all excited to go see an iceberg. And then we found out it was an icebreaker. And we still came down to see it.
And it was so exciting. Yeah. Anything further for the assembly? Seeing none, thank you all. We are adjourned. That is funny.